We are happy to have Danya with us today to share some of her wisdom and experience with the crowd. And we're grateful to our title sponsors here on the bottom. If you're looking to be a sponsor, Midday Connect, reach out to Hannah and she can get you the information. And we'll turn it over to Danya.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to get my screen share set up. Okay. Can everyone see my slides? Awesome. I got a thumbs up. So I'm going to try to whiz through and see what we can cover in 15 minutes. I'm going to try to get in some stuff around mission and vision. The vision piece might have to be bonus/homework because I do want to make some space and time to actually get work done together around mission for starters so that you can leave with something really tangible today. So before I dive in, to say a little bit about myself. I'm Danya. I'm here in Mar Vista, Los Angeles on the west side, but I have to say that I am from the East Coast and I never thought I would leave New York. I just happened to marry a Southern Californian and he meant it when he said he was coming back to the Pacific. And so I'm enjoying the sun. That is the truth. I've gone soft. I spent about 15 years as an operator and an entrepreneur across a whole bunch of industries, including nonprofit and mainly tech and venture capital, both early stage and late stage. And I took a big zag somewhere in the middle there, an entrepreneurial zag to start my own media company, which was in the kind of religion, spirituality, wellness space. And it was the outgrowth of a total passion project that I never planned to turn into a business, but was a really formative stage in my kind of build from scratch career and education. And now I am an executive coach, a leadership consultant, and a startup advisor with a focus on really like 0 to 1.5, I would say. So I'm really a build from scratch person. I coach founders and also rising leaders, senior leaders, one-on-one with a focus both on like what's up for you in this moment and also the foundational skills and capacities needed to address that thing now and other things like it in the future. And when I am doing more tactical work with startups, I tend to focus on really foundational stuff like mission, vision, values. I think it's never too early to build those foundations in. We'll talk about that in a second. Hiring, onboarding, team management. I love all things people, and then also strategy and planning. And I'm actually outside of this session today, mostly focusing my day on my own reflection and planning session for my business. And I love working with creatives. I love working with generalists. I especially love working with startup founders, and they could be ramping up or winding down their companies. I do both ends of the life cycle. And leaders who are like really at the vortex of peak career, usually young family, identity shift. And it's just like, oh my God, what's happening? It's all at once. So that's the quick gist about me. Always happy to share more later. I just wanted to check in before we get started in terms of the topic today. Does anyone here already have for their company or for themselves, if you want to like go personal, this is totally relevant, an articulated mission or vision? And if so, like how has that supported you? Feel free to drop in chat. So for me, the reason this is so important is because it touches everything. So if you have articulated a clear mission and vision for your business or even for yourself, especially if you're a freelancer, a contractor, or even just like in your life, it helps people decide whether or not to align with you. That could be customers, that could be employees, that could be partners in life or in work, could be investors. It also really grounds your strategy and your execution and creates guardrails. And we need guardrails. We need boundaries to know what to do, what not to do. There's not time to do it all. They also, on the other end, can help you measure success. Like your mission and your vision can actually help you determine what metrics or what measures you're paying attention to define, like, have we done it, whatever it is. And then also mission and vision can be your anchor, your team's anchor when you are experiencing challenge, and they can really contribute to resilience. So I'm actually looking right now for the chat. Let's see. Yeah, still trying to figure it out. Totally okay. And let's see if we can get started on it for you today, Ryan. Okay, so when's the right time? Actually, that's a great question. When's it the right time to figure out mission and vision, to articulate it? It's not like a one and done. I think it's worth coming back to every once in a while. But I would say at inception, like that is not too early. I'm also thinking about like, when do people even hire me to do this work with them? So sometimes it's like in the first 1 to 2 years of a business, like you're really starting based on intuition, a larger dream, an idea, and then it gets articulated and formed for an external audience in this kind of way later. Maybe you're starting to hire, that's the prompt. Maybe you're raising money, that's the prompt. I'd say another good time is during annual or even quarterly planning. Like anytime you're stopping to pause and reflect on what's working, what's not working, what to do, what not to do. This is a good anchor to have in hand. I'm also thinking about a client who recently hired me to do this for them after they were acquired and they were still continuing to exist inside of a larger company, and they kind of needed to recalibrate, like what's the core of our mission and vision as it has been, how much of that stays true, how much if any shifts now that we're part of a parent company. So those are all good times. Okay, so what's the difference? Sometimes this stuff feels like really jargony and it's just like mission, vision, blah, it's like the future. Here's how I would define it. Mission is your reason for being and your niche. There's a book out there. Folks might be familiar with EOS. I know that you've had someone present here from EOS before. Some of this language comes from their book Traction, which I did find very helpful. And then vision is a picture of reality at a certain point in time in the future. So that would be like saying on December 17th, 2025, and then imagining in great detail what the truth of that moment looks like for your company, for yourself, etc. So let's dig into mission first. And by the way, feel free at any time to ask questions in the chat. I'm keeping that up. I'll see if I can kind of dual track or save them for later. So mission. Mission is what your business does, why, so to what end, like who even cares? Why are you doing that thing? How, in what way do you do the thing? And for whom? So the primary person who experiences the pain that you are solving. So it's the what, the why, the how, and the for whom. And when you put that all together, you get your larger reason for being and your niche. So there's like a unique purpose to what you're up to. So I mentioned this in my networking session, but in the middle of the pandemic, my husband and I quit our jobs. We were in a really privileged position to be able to do so in that moment. We had a 2.5-year-old. We had a lot of healing to do from just like early parenthood, pandemic. I had just shut down a company, other life stuff. And we just went on a 4-month sabbatical to Spain. And it totally did the trick and it re-inspired us. And I would say, if I'm using this as the metaphor, the mission here was a multi-month sabbatical. That's the what in Spain. The why, so that we can heal and get re-inspired. The how was quit our jobs and rent a little place in southern Spain. And the for whom was like just the 3 of us. And we biked a lot. So that was the mission. Like the idea of what we were up to, who the we was, how we were going to get there, not the tactics, but just like the overall approach. Like we're going to quit our jobs and we're going to fly to Spain and rent this apartment. And we're doing it for like a reason. We're doing it to just like get better and get psyched again. Vision is different. Vision is what's on the other end, like for real, the actual lived result, the impact of the mission being realized to some degree. And vision, you're always going to be re-envisioning because you can always choose a different point in time and time passes. So you will hit that mark. Visions should be vivid, descriptive, specific, also achievable. So like within a year, what's actually possible, fulfilling. And that's both for you and your team, as well as all the people that surround you, your industry, your customers, the larger impact you're going to have. And so that's a picture of us, like probably about a year later, after we like set the mission in motion, actually outside of our tiny little apartment in this town that we'd been to once before, with our daughter holding a puppet that she won at a show in Madrid from the day that we arrived. So to be totally honest, I couldn't fully have envisioned or perhaps articulated exactly what it was going to look like then, but maybe I would have described, like, we're standing outside of our tiny little apartment at the top of the hill, looking out at the white houses on this gorgeous day, not feeling stressed, feeling connected, like, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we would be moving towards. So I actually just want to go back for a second. With mission, applied, like, where would this go? What would you do with this? This can go so many places as a reminder to yourself and to others, or as a magnet to others. It can go on your website. It can go in job listings. You can put it up somewhere at an all hands or a team offsite as a reminder of like what you're anchoring into. It could be part of planning instructions for Q1, Q2, for yourself, for your team. It can go in performance reviews, like how mission aligned is each person that you're partnering with or working with at any given time. If you reward your employees, you could reward them based on values, based on mission. It can go in your BD strategy. So who are you going to partner with? Who are you not? Are you mission aligned? Maybe that's a line in the sand. Maybe they're amazing in every other way, but you're just like not on the same page about unique purpose and niche. So I'm going to pause for a minute. I want to say a little bit more about vision, and we'll see if we can get into that. And then I want to hopefully get through some of this together. Spencer, I haven't been doing a great job at keeping my time. What's my cutoff?
No, you're good. We usually go until close to 11:35, 11:40. But if people have questions along the way, we can field those.
Beautiful. Okay. So let's go back to mission for a second. Any questions about mission first? Because we're going to get into it. So I want to make sure things are clear before we do. Or it feels clear. How do you share our mission? Ryan, are you asking like literally tactically? Like, how do you share it? Like, is it yeah, yeah. So I think part of the question is like, where is it getting shared and when is it getting shared? I usually think of mission as just a statement. So that's what we're going to build together in a minute. And then you can share that in all different kinds of ways. Like that could go on your about page on your website. And it's literally the statement. And maybe you have like a descriptor or like a little paragraph that says more about it or like where the mission came from, or that kind of like spells out each piece of the mission a bit more. If you are utilizing mission in BD strategy, which I've done and find really helpful because it can be super appealing to partner with all different kinds of organizations or people for lots of other reasons. But then in the end, it kind of crumples because you aren't mission aligned. That might just be for yourself. So it's like an internal tool. Maybe you've created a little bit of a broader filter for whom we partner with, whom we don't, the kinds of partners we're seeking, their characteristics or qualities, and you're building the mission into that. So like you share a niche, for example, or you have the same why. Like maybe you actually have different audiences, and that's part of the reason for partnering because you want to expand yours, but you share a core kind of reason for why you're out in the world doing what you're doing, but you're just doing it for different people. Is that helpful, Ryan? Looking for more? Cool. Any other mission questions? I'm going to move on to vision, say a little bit more about that, and then we're going to get to work. So with vision, I really think about articulating vision as a creative writing project, or at least that's the way that I've learned to do it and the way that I love to do it the most. If you want to look up later, I will make a note to myself to remember to send this as like a follow-up somehow. But there's a bakery called Zingerman's, and they also have a leadership institute. There's a whole other story about that. But their content is really cool and helpful. And they have a lot of good stuff out there around vision. And I have taken a lot of my approach from theirs, which is like very much a storytelling approach. So articulating vision, creative writing project, at least for starters, you pick a specific date in the future, and then you just start writing. And it's as a draft. So like it's free form, it's free flowing, you're going to the moon, and it's as if it's already happening. So you're writing on a date in the future, December 17th, 2025, but you're not using future tense. You're saying it's whatever day of the week, December 17th, 2025, 10 a.m. Pacific. I've just come from a coffee date with blah-de-blah employee that I just hired and I'm like super psyched to have on the team. The two of us are about to get started on da 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 da. So like you are in the present tense, you are in that moment and you are living it as if it's already happening. And it's holistic. So it's not just work, it's personal and it's professional. I find this is also especially relevant if you are a founder. There should be a line between what you create and who you are. Happy to work with you on that if that feels like a struggle. That's a topic for a different time. And what you do and who you are is pretty closely aligned when you're building something of your own, rooted in your own experience or rooted in your own passion. So I would blend personal and professional in a vision. And that might mean like, you're doing your whole day and you're like, okay, and it's 4:45 and I'm starting to look at my clock because I know that I'm picking up my kids in 15 minutes and we're really psyched because we're about to go to the mountains and like enjoy the snow or whatever. Like it's really holistic. And I would say you write without stopping for at least 15 minutes and just see what comes. So that's how you approach this version of vision articulation. There are some things to keep in mind. Did I write these down? No. But I'll tell them to you now. So measurable targets. You're just building all this into the story, into the vision, and it adds to the vivid detail. So like, what are the audacious and attainable goals you hope your company or you will have achieved by that date and time? Like actually say the numbers and just see what feels right, see what feels good. You can double check them later. You can like do the math later. And that might be like a particular revenue goal. It might be a number of clients. It could also be something a little bit higher level. I think this one's also from Traction, but the idea of a referral from every client and every client a referral. So you might have a target like that, where you're like, that's our lived reality at that point. Okay, so measurable targets. There's also impact. So in your vision, you're considering the impact you want your company to have. Again, that's like if your mission is realized at that point in time. And maybe the mission is not fully realized, but at that moment, what the realization of that mission looks like at that time. And I would think broadly about impact. So like start in your own circle, like the impact on yourself. Like, are you fulfilled in that moment? Can you imagine with all the things that you're describing that you're like still really jazzed, or like maybe you're burnt out? Maybe writing the vision for your company actually reveals something to you about yourself and like what part of the work you're doing lights you up or where you are in this moment. And it's not predetermined. Like then maybe you figure out what to do about that gap between now and then. But so impact on yourself, on the people closest to you. That could be your family, that could be your friends. It could also be your team. I would also think about customers, industry, so your broader industry. Like if you are achieving your mission by that point in time, how do your peers have to change? How do your competitors have to shift? You can also just ask yourself, like, how do we want to be known? How do we want to be remembered? Like at that point in time, what are others thinking of you? How do they feel about you, your company, your brand? And in terms of impact, I would also think big, like what has yet to happen in your industry or for anyone who might share your mission. So something brand new. I mentioned revenue as like one of the measurable targets, but I just want to double click on that one. Like put the dollar signs in there. I think that's really important. And if it scares you, that's okay. Again, you can do the math and figure out if it's possible, but like be ambitious. I would name like actual number of team members, org structure, size of company. Is it remote? Are you all together? And then last, when you think about specifically your customers, your clients, your partners, who are you serving and collaborating with? Like name the companies or name the people. Maybe they're people you know now, maybe they're not. So that's vision. We're going to shift back to mission and do some real-time work. Vision is your homework. But what questions do you have about vision, if any?
Yeah, I just have one question.
Yeah.
So, first of all, thanks for the presentation. It's really interesting to see like how vision and mission and vision can, completely narrate a strategy for a business. What would you say is like when you are a new startup, how would you say we should be defining our long-term vision versus the short-term vision that we want to sell to like investors for, let's say, right? Or any other key stakeholder that might be impacted by our steps in the future, but that future is yet to come. So,
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, one real life example just came to mind, and the infuriating answer I'm going to give you is like it's kind of context dependent. But I'm thinking about the company that I mentioned who was recently acquired.
mhm,
They are very startup-y. Like they are scrappy, they have a huge vision. The team was about a dozen core people. They'd been
mhm,
acquired by this big company. And we did a full day retreat around mission, vision, values. And what was really interesting and different than my usual, because I'm typically working with entrepreneurs in like venture-backed tech, where there's a certain pace of things.
mhm.
Uh, their industry was poultry.
Ah,
And yes, poultry, chickens. And
that's good.
there's like just going to be a longer time horizon. Like things are slower, even though they're super startup-y and they'd gotten a ton done in their first initial couple of years. Now that they've been acquired by like this big parent company, we had some really interesting, I would say, constraints around like pace of change and impact within the time that we were looking at. And also normally I would look at like 1 year, and they just were like, that's too, like, it's just kind of, we could do like 1 month and plan ahead
Mhm.
for like our next kind of month or quarter, and we can plan ahead for 3 years. But like 1 year is kind of a weird number for us because it's just not long enough for like real change to happen. So I would say, thinking about the context, like, do you want to say, have you all started at all? Like, are you in idea phase? What realm are you in? Industry are you in?
So right now we are in the MVP prototyping stage, and like we're planning to launch by end of this month or early January. So I have been through the EOS framework and drafted the VTO organizer, right? And the thing I find myself challenging was like defining your vision based on like next 3 months, 6 month, 3 year, 1 year, and 10 year goals, right? So each of them drastically change because our grand vision is definitely to stay in business for like forever, right? And in the financial sector industry. When it comes to like showing your short-term vision to any potential investor or any other stakeholder. So that becomes a challenging aspect for me to understand.
Yeah. Well, the thought that comes to mind, and I'd be happy to like dive in a little bit more with you after the fact, is that at the very outset, I often find it's helpful to go really far out, like go the 10 years and kind of leapfrog all of the micro steps and really get dreamy and imagine like, how is the world different if this idea that we have comes to life? And don't worry about working back every single step. Like that's kind of where you sell the big, big, big vision to the investors. Like we're disrupting blah, and there will be no more investment banks because we're doing, like really far out. Maybe that's even the 30-year vision.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's hard to be super duper specific because you're going to invent things you can't even imagine. But it allows you to bypass some of the more like tactical, logical pieces that might get you stuck in this moment as you're thinking big. Maybe it's more then about like, it might be about a feeling, like your own kind of sense of what things are like for you, what things are like for the people who have the problem that you're solving. It might also be about like a problem that doesn't exist anymore. And then you just kind of start to dream up like what would be possible if that weren't a problem anymore for people and for which people. But then for your own self, you might just want to plan like 6 months, 12 months, because it's hard to see past that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's like, looking at the two different pictures at the same time. So that's where it kind of gets confusing. But anyways, I took your thoughts onto my personal notes and they'd be helpful, I'm sure.
Great. Yeah. And another thing I'll throw out there is like for this question, which I think can be relatively universal, like holding the near term and the very long term at the same time. That's just a question of like holding complexity. And that's not always an innate skill either. That's something to cultivate. And there are a lot of good resources out there around like polarity, complexity. How do you hold the both and the near term and the very long term? Okay, I'll do one more question and then we'll jump into getting some mission work done. Taylor asked, who on your team should be involved in creating the vision? Such a good question. I would say this is the kind of thing that starts with a very small group, likely founder, co-founders, CEO, like maybe 2 to 3 people. And then depending on the size of the organization, I would bring people in or kind of waterfall. But it can be hard with like lots of cooks in the kitchen at the start. Another way to do it is if you have a core like exec team or you have a board that you want to bring in, everyone can do their own. Like you can do it all together, but you can each take 15 plus minutes to write down your own vision and then speak up and compare and co-create. But I would still keep that to like a reasonable number of people. And it also needs time to simmer. So like, let's say you're a founder, a co-founder, CEO, start there. You might need other people's perspectives. Like you're totally in your own, kind of silo or vortex sometimes, and you can't see beyond, but also a big part of your role is to be the visionary, or at least to know who can support you in being visionary. So I would start with yourself, and then maybe you bring in like 1 or 2 trusted advisors. You show what you did, you get people to like push you a little bit. But ultimately, I would keep it to like a tight team of people who really are kind of the key stakeholders, and then absolutely would share it. And a cool thing that you can do too is like if you have kind of a top-down vision and you do get it to be like informed by other people who you think should have a say, you can still at planning junctures have each team, depending on like how big your team is, you can have each team do their own version, like their own kind of trickle down version of the vision, but for their team. So it's like a double click on the high level vision. And then they do that for their own team at that same point in time, but with more detail for the specific realm of work that they do. And then they get to plan from that. Okay, so let's do this. I want you to walk away with something concrete. And if you already have something, maybe play with what you have. Let's see if you can shift it or update it, or kind of match it to the model. So again, this is the what, the why, the how, and for whom. And you should come out with a statement. So like blah does blue by ba for shoe in order to Z. I'm going to give you just a couple of examples. I work with two lawyers who left big law. They started their own law firm. They're very startup. They work with startups, and they also themselves are a very small team. Their mission, still a work in progress to date, is we are attorneys to emerging companies and venture capital investors who better the world through science, technology, and lifestyle. So that's their mission. The poultry company is we revolutionize agriculture by applying modern technology to ancient farming methods to make pasture-raised more accessible and affordable for everyone. Those are just a couple of examples. Sunit, I see your question. Yeah, listen, not that I think like this is another both and. Like you want to fully invest and hold tightly when you come up with something that you feel conviction around, and also hold it loosely and like let it change if need be. So I would intend to not shift and change rapidly all the time, because that can be really destabilizing. But vision is a certain point in time. So like you're always going to have a new vision that you're working through, or like a new point in time that you're envisioning. Bye, BJ. Okay, so what? So we're just going to do a couple minutes for each of these. Don't think too hard. Kind of speak from the heart, the gut. What does your company do? And just write this down and we can piece together the sentence at the end. What does your company do? What is your company in the business of doing or not doing? So take a couple of minutes to do that. Maybe throw up a thumbs up emoji if you're good. Could be in the chat, could be on your screen. Cool. Okay. Why? Why does your company do what it does? What need or what needs does your company fulfill? And drop a smiley face in the chat or on your screen when you're ready. Okay. how is what your company does delivered to its community, to its customers? How are your offerings delivered? And we're going to honor my West Coastness and drop a palm tree or a thumbs up. That's okay too. Okay. And for whom? Who are you doing this for? Any emoji you want when you're done. Okay. And then piece it all together. And it doesn't have to be precisely in this order. See what works out for you. And I'd love to see what you came up with. Share your mission statement in the chat. We won't hold you to it. We know it's just a draft, but it would be really cool to know why you're up to what you're up to and for whom.
Everyone's shy, Danya. It's vulnerable, that first
Yeah,
pass.
totally. It's true. I love that the word courage comes from coeur, which is French for heart. So yeah, it is tender. It is tender. And if anyone does feel brave, would love to see. And if not, it's all good. So that's what I've got
Just
for
a
you.
second, I'm typing it. Just a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Yes, we
typing.
got one. Nice. Taylor, I don't know if the term liberates is like specifically utilized with like liberating IP from universities, but to me that stands out so strongly. I love that.
Thanks. We do feel like it's trapped inside of universities, so it fits.
Yeah. And it's like a very optimistic, expansive, like instead of like we wrest it from the hands of university, it's like we're liberated. Yeah. Awesome, y'all. First passes are great, Ryan. often the hardest. Okay, so that's it from me. One thing you'll do in the next week to take action on your mission. That might be let it simmer and not look at it again, but keep it in the back of your mind. It could be share it with someone for feedback. Feel free to share your commitment if you want in the chat, or just jot it down for yourself. Thank you so much for having me here, for participating, for being courageous. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Danya.
Danya. This is
Great.
awesome.
I hope everyone has a great next week. We'll take off for Christmas, and we will, if you're following us on LinkedIn, you'll see updates on our next few events. So have a happy holiday to everyone.
Thanks. Thanks, Danya.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you.